So you can see my painting bigger. So I'm going to go along all of the lines I created to, against my fireplace and so forth. That back wall right now, and just kind of go over the lines you created, whether you worked in pencil or paint. I go over the lines a little bit. I don't really need those lines. I just need the space where I'm creating it. So just note, I have a layer of paint down already, so I'm painting a little bit thinner, but you might want to go a little thicker with your paint when you're working. So you can see I'm kind of covering that background. And I'm going to quickly cover up the rest so we can get into some details as we go. But again, I'm going to work back to front, which means I'm going to do this back wall. I'm going to do the window as well, what's inside my window, the landscape outside. And at the same time, I'm going to start thinking about some shadows. So what's going to happen is we're going to lay color down, which is kind of my favorite way to paint, like kind of put color down and then go back in with some details later. So the way to handle my tree or your tree is go in a little bit. You can see I didn't really draw in a very detailed way, and I did that on purpose because I want my background down and I want to lay the branches and the leaves over my background so you can kind of see through. Right, a tree is not completely opaque. Sometimes I'm looking at my tree, it's you can like see the background through the branches sometimes. Okay, so that's as simple as I'm going to get for this. Just in the nature of kind of getting things down, and I said I like to cover a lot of my painting before I go in with details. I'm going to put that ground in too. So I'm going to put my floor in as well. I am going to keep a separation between the back wall and that corner and then my floor, but I'm going to keep my floor about the same color. You can notice in my painting that I did, I started going in with some darks, and I did that after to get shadows and to create depth. So right now, if you've got this color that, or similar color that I made, which I just added a brown, white, and a little bit of black to kind of dull and darken my color so it's not so bright, I'm going to also put that color. You can notice my color, I purposely made it a little bit darker so that I can see a separation where the floor hits the wall, so that corner. So the only thing I'm not painting right now is my tree, my window, and my fireplace. So again, getting a base down. And we can do that fairly quickly. But keep in mind, we will be going back into these areas. So what you're going to do after you're done with that is I'm just going to provide a little bit of separation right here between, like I said, my wall and my floor. And the way I'm going to do that is, if you notice, I'm using a bigger brush right now. I'm going to kind of switch back and forth from my big brush and my small brush when I need to do details. So at this point, I'm going to make a slightly darker color using the same colors I used for my walls and my floor. I'm just going to add less white to it. And I'm doing this now because this is wet paint, so it'll be easier to blend. So I kind of will put in a little line here of separation. That's my floor hitting my wall. I'm going to bring this color up a little bit, this darkness up, so I don't necessarily have a line. And what's going to happen, because I just did this, is it's blending a little bit. The beauty of working like this too is you have your color already mixed. So if I wanted to blend this some more, if my paint is dry, I can go back, add a little bit of my wall color. And then the way that I blend with acrylic paints or oil paints is you take a fairly clean brush with no paint on it. And if both sides are wet, you're dark against your light, you just take that clean brush and you go over it. And instead of creating light on top of the dark or dark on top of the light, it mixes the colors. The other way to do it is also with a clean brush. You just make a squiggly line on the line between the colors. for the dark and light, and that blends it, and then you go over it again. That kind of creates a little bit of a blended area. So if you are done with your background, and again, it's just a base, we're gonna go back in. I'm gonna start creating what's inside my window or outside my window. And I've already put, like I said, a blue base down. So you obviously want to get like a sky color. You can get brighter or you can get darker depending on what you want. I pretty much took my blue and just add a little bit of white to it. You can take a little bit of black and add it and you'll gray it a little bit. That's just the basics if you've got basic colors. I'm gonna, so that's what you want to do. You kind of want to add some blue back there. And since I've already done that, I'm going to go into my trees. And I've got my blue and yellow make an okay color. I'm going to add a little bit of brown to my colors. So I'm using my yellow, my blue, which makes green, and it's making too bright of a color for me. So I'm taking a little bit. If you notice when I'm pulling my paints, like when I'm taking paint, I'm taking it from the edge of my puddle so I don't dirty the whole puddle of paint. So it's just the edge, and then I'm mixing my colors in the middle. So I'm going to take this green paint and I'm going to create a little bit of a tree in the background. I'm kind of doing almost like squiggles to create my branches. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. Let me put this up a little bit closer for you. Because remember what I said, you can often see through the branches of the trees. And this is supposed to be, you know, in my window. Not really my window, but so I'm creating one tree there. And then another tree, again, with a point on top. And then each side, I'm kind of spinning my brush a little bit as I'm doing this and squiggling it. And then what I'm going to do, kind of doing it again with a little bit darker of a color. Both trees.
Jessica, if I don't have a green color, how can I make it? I only have red, yellow, black, blue, and white.
So you make it in blue and yellow, make green. And then if you take a little bit of black, because I know we have limited palette here, a little tiny bit of black, it'll make it so your green is not so bright.
Okay.
And you should be able to make it.
So blue and yellow.
Blue and yellow make green. And then once you make your green color, you might like that color that you have. It just all depends on the paints you have, on what colors, you know, the green you make. If you want to make it a little bit duller and a little bit darker, add a tiny bit of black to that. And if you want to make it a little bit lighter, add a little bit of white. You have to be careful when you add white to green because it often makes a very like minty color green, which is not something that you necessarily always see in nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I missed it. I know you told before.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's a good refresher for everybody. So I have my trees and my blue background. I'm going to add, I'm down at the bottom here. I'm going to take some white and kind of add like a little snow that the trees are sitting on. And then I'm also going to just touch, I'm taking my white paint. My white is actually, it's not quite a pure white, I don't think. It's got a little bit of warmth in my white. So you can always add a little bit of brown to it, a little bit of blue, if you don't want it to be so powerfully white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my brush and just dab some snow on the top of these branches. Just like the snow has fallen and hitting the top branches of my trees. And you can see how I'm lightly doing it. I'm leaving a lot of spots of green. I'm sorry. Asma, do you need something?
Oh, nothing. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So outside your window can be as simple as that. And you'll notice I didn't add the details of the actual window frame at this point. I'm going to do that now. You can get more detailed if you want your background to be more detailed. You can, add snowflakes. You can kind of like flick the paint on your brush, and you can add like kind of like sprinkles of snow, or you can add dots if you wanted to show that it's snowing. That's really up to you. So make this painting your own, obviously. The next thing, since we're doing the window, I'm just going to get a window frame around my window. So I'm going to take my white paint. I'm going to go all the way around. You'll notice what I do, so I don't get my painting, I don't smudge my whole painting. I don't really lean my whole hand down on my painting. I often lean my pinky down to steady my hands. And that's just, it's just easier, and it, like I said, steadies my hand. So here's like a little bit of a window frame. I'm going to put a window frame on my other painting. What I did was I put the frame here too, kind of right over those trees, a line, and then right down the middle. And I'll put the bottom in here, just the line here. Again, my line doesn't have any details right now, but I'll move it up a little closer so you can see. It's a little bit lopsided, but okay. So in order to make that stand out a little bit more, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix. We've been using like all nice kind of browns and warm colors. I'm going to cool off my color a little bit more, that color that I used for the background. I'm going to add a little bit extra black and make kind of like a more grayish brown, because I'm going to add some details in that window frame. And you can always test out your color. So like when you're using your color and when you're painting, test out a little bit to see if you like it. Oh, so yeah, for me, that's like a good color. And then what I used was brown, a little bit of black, and white to make a kind of warmer gray color. And where I'm going to put that is on the left outside area of my window frame. So right about there. You always want to be careful. You don't want to outline something, but often you do see lines outside. If you have a hard time with these small little lines, then make them thicker or don't add them at all. One on the inside. And then on my right side, I'm going to go on the inside of my window frame. And it starts to create a little bit of dimension. So on the right side, that even down here at the bottom, I'm doing the same thing on the inside. So you'll notice on the left side, I have on the outside of the window frame, I've got a little dark. On the right side, on the inside. And then just to kind of mimic this on this little bar right here, I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. Everyone see that? Creates a little bit of dimension. Okay. And then one more place I'm going to put this gray is right underneath the windowsill. That creates a little bit of a shadow. And that's my window for now. Again, you could always add or change. So you could see this in the whole context of my painting. It's pretty small. It's like about that big. I'm painting small. All right, so we're going to move on to our fireplace. We'll save the tree. I think that's the most fun part. We'll save the tree for last. My fireplace that I did on my painting above is, I kept everything pretty white, pretty light cream color. So I'm going to take a white. When your brushes are resting, make sure you put them in the water. You don't want your brushes. My paint is seemingly drying fast, which is odd when it's so cold, but maybe with the heat on, my paint is drying fast. Keep your paint brushes in the water so you don't ruin them. So I'm taking my white paint. Again, I'm using a lot of the same colors. I'm adding little bits of my brown, little bits of my black. That's the basis of a lot of the colors I'm creating today in this space. But I'm playing with my either adding more black if I want a darker color, or more white if I want a lighter color. For my fireplace, I'm going a little lighter than my background. But again, we will add some darks. And that looks almost exactly like my background. So let's do this. Okay, so my fireplace is slightly different than my background. We'll add some shadow around there so that we could obviously tell the difference. So again, it's just a little bit more white, but I added brown and black to that fireplace. Simple. I know it's a little bit hard to see because it's very similar to my backgrounds. And that's okay for now. The other area I'm going to do is that area right in front, the kind of flat base of the fireplace here. And before I go on any further, add details, I'm going to add my the black of the, I don't know, I call it a hearth. I'm going pretty, I mixed my black with my brown and made, again, a warm black. Again, this kind of oval, half of an oval shape to create the inside of my fireplace. I'm using a very small brush just so I can get some details in. So you can see how things start off really simply. We're just having, we're putting in very simple shapes right now, kind of blocking things out. That's the best way to start your painting. It's the best way to start your drawing. The same gray that I used for that window to create some details, I'm going to use for my fireplace as well. And again, that was my black, brown, and white. So that's going to create, I'm going to put this down a little bit further away. That's going to create some details. So when I'm going in to my fireplace, again, to create these separations between the areas of the fireplace, I'm going to use a simple gray. And I'm also going to block out the base, the front of the base, with this gray as well. And a lot of times you don't need, almost never, you don't need a line separating things. You just need colors or shapes, right? The way that we're creating this is not blocking it out with a line, but blocking out with color. And I can carry that little bit on the edge here. And that creates like my corner. And if it's too kind of stark gray, I can add a little bit of that cream color, that same color that I added to my fireplace, the back of it, to the front here as well. The thing that I missed in my drawing is kind of the top of the fireplace where those candlesticks that I had drawn were sitting on top of. So I'm just going to add that right at the top there. Again, a really simple way to add the top and the bottom and to add this fireplace. If I really wanted it to stand out from the wall, again, that same color, I could bring it up along the edge, outside edge of my fireplace and create a shadow. I'm pretty delicate with my lines. It creates a little bit of a shadow. And like I mentioned before, to kind of break up that gray down at the bottom. Again, I'm working with all the same colors, my white, my brown, a little bit of black. I'm remixing that back color. I'm adding it a little bit to the base here. Kind of blending it softly. That creates a little bit of dimension and interest in the foreground. So we could, before we're done, we'll add the candlesticks later. But right now, what we can do is we can add a little bit of the fire in there. Because probably your fireplace, the black is probably a little bit dry, but it's got a little bit of blending that you can do too, because it's not fully dry. So all I did was first you start with your, so to make orange, it's red and yellow. You could make an orange. I seem to be making a pink here, but remember to clean your brushes. If you keep your brushes dirty, then what happens is those browns and blacks you've been using will go right into your orange. I'm going to move my whole painting over so you can see me mixing my colors. All I'm going to do to create flames is use the tip of my brush to create those like skinny edges of the flames. Something similar to that. So the first layer is kind of like your orange and your reds. Then the next layer of the fire would be more of your yellows that you can add on top. When I'm adding my yellows on top, I'm not adding it on the whole thing. I want to still see my orange down at the bottom. Again, you can create as much or as little detail to these fires and these things that we're doing as you'd like. My fire is pretty simple. Pretty simple. What I did in my original painting is I took a little bit of that yellow color and I created a little bit of a reflection down at the bottom of the base of my fireplace. So like right here, I just took a little bit of yellow with the white and I added it to my fireplace to kind of create that glow. You can see it's really subtle. You can see a little bit of that right along here. Just creating a little bit of that, like I said, glow of the fireplace. And I think the next thing we'll do is, again, we come back again with lots of details as we work, but the best way is getting everything down. So we're not kind of deserting our fireplace, but I would move along to the tree now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to kind of get our darks in. We're going to get our little details like our candlesticks and things like that in once we get the tree down. And I think when you add everything down, you put everything down kind of quickly, like we're doing now. It gives you like a full view of what you want to do to your painting and how you want to change it. And acrylic paint, if you're working in acrylic, has the ability to do that. If you make a mistake, you paint over. If you're working in watercolor, not so lucky because you can't really go over watercolor. You have to be a little bit more thoughtful and slower about your painting when you're working in watercolor. So again, back to our greens, which is blue and yellow. So that's one green that I just mixed. You can see that kind of like a lighter green. I'm going to mix even another green, and I'm going to take my blue, my yellow, and I'm going to put some brown in. I'm also going to put a little bit of black in. I use my black a lot in colors. I rarely use it like straight on my painting, but I use it when I'm mixing colors. So what the black is going to do, and the reason why I'm creating right now two greens, a dark and a lighter, is because you want your tree to have depth. And the only way to do that is to have darks and lights, and that makes the tree look dimensional. So instead of looking like a flat 2D tree, it looks more three-dimensional. So you can see my tree is, well, it's just the ghost of a tree right now. We're gonna work in with some darks first, and then work over the darks with some lighter green. So right now, that's what it looks like. These are the two colors, dark green, where I add a little bit of brown, a little bit of black to my green, and then this is just pure blue and yellow, this other green. And when I'm mixing these colors, I'm mixing little puddles, which means that I'm going to have to mix them again, probably, and that's okay. So the first thing we want to do is kind of similar to what we started in our background, is I take my trio, that's not as dark as I thought it was going to be. And I think about these kinds of branches, and I kind of dab my paint a little bit because I want to be able to, again, see through the edges. I don't like that my paint is not dark enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more black to my paint. Again, I want to get it dark first and then go ahead in with the light. You can see I'm kind of dabbing my tree. My brush is like making these kind of cool pine needles. This is just like an accident here, but I'm going all the way down my tree. Some people create trees where they take their brush and I'll show you how to do it. They kind of roll their brush back and forth, kind of like this. You see how I'm rolling my brush? You could do it that way too. That kind of works nicely. I'm doing it, but I'm just dabbing. So you can do it one of two ways. But I'm letting my branches, if you notice, my branches are kind of going down, right? On a tree, the branches, or in these kinds of trees, the branches are kind of, I'm kind of going down a little bit. So I'm going to continue doing this, but I need more paint. So I'm refilling my palette with some more yellow, some more blue, and some more brown. So I can mix more paint color and more green for my tree. So when you're working, get down your darker color. Make sure you leave space on the edges of your tree where you can see whatever the background is, and keep going, filling in the entire thing. And just keep in mind, we are going to give it a layer of a lighter color. So right now my color is really dark. It's going back and forth from being dark, but I'm leaving space in between. You see how I'm dabbing my brush. And if your color, as you're like remixing your color, gets darker or lighter, that's okay. It actually, having these like kind of different darks and lights, really, like I said, excuse the train whistle, creates depth to your work. So you could see mine is not all one flat color, even right now, even though I just was really attempting to kind of make a similar dark. So this is the way it should start. Right now, my color looks a little bluish. Again, I have black in it, I have blue in it. But now what I'm going to do is, if you remember, I mixed those two colors, the dark green, and now I'm going to go to my lighter green. Clean your brush off in your water. If you need to change your water, do that, and dry your brush on your paper towel. So I'm going back in. This is the second color I made. Oops. Sorry, my screen froze for a second, which was just blue and yellow. I'm going to test it out, see if I like it on my tree. I think I do. Oh yeah, see that? How light that is? I kind of like that. And I'm thinking about my fireplace. Perhaps I'm casting some light on my tree. So my fireplace is on the left, and the left side of the tree is going to have a little bit more light kind of hitting it. And I'm not going over it. I'm dabbing it so that you see the dark through it. You see that? And I can go over a little, and I'm focusing it mostly on the left side of my tree. Again, thinking about there's a window there, there's my fireplace. It's all casting light on my tree. So I'm going to go down the left side of that tree with this kind of greenish color, this light green. I'm just letting it kind of like touch some of the branches. Now you can see the difference. That side is a lot lighter than that side. And I'm going to do one more thing because I want to go even a little bit lighter. I'm going to add a little bit of white to my color and then a little bit of brown. I'm going to test it out. Oh yeah, see that? When you're doing like foliage, trees, plants, often you want lots of layers of color if you want to create like kind of this rich, deep foliage. So you've noticed this is a third color that I made. It's even lighter than the one that I made. It's a little bit duller. It's got more brown in it. So I added white. Maybe that's too light. And as I'm adding this color, I'm adding kind of less and less. So like I added the most dark, then when I did the second layer on top of it, I, dabbed it on a little bit. And then this third layer of even lighter is a little bit less. So you can see that this side of my tree has a lot of depth and dimension because I got different layers of color. I'm going to work on my right side as well. The only difference with my right side of my tree is what I'm going to do is stay darker. So my lights aren't going to be super light. I might make a color that, like we have this color here, that was my red. I'm sorry, red, not red. My blue and my yellow, and I added black to it. I would just add a little bit less black and a little bit less brown and see what that looks like. I'm just getting some more paint on my palette. And the tree is, I think, the most fun part to do because you can't make much of a mistake with it. The branches are kind of fun and all over the place. Okay, so that's the color that I made. It's, again, it's hard for me to say exactly how much of each color. You have to kind of judge according to what your tree looks like, but you want a shade a little bit lighter than the color and the shade that you have on the right side, but not as light as the left side. Again, I'm focusing my lights on the left side, not the right side. But I want my right side to have some depth and dimension. The only way to get that is to have a little bit of light. So I did a little bit of dabbing of the paint. And again, not as detailed. And you'll notice the edges, they're not perfect, my edges. You might see little holes in my tree branches, especially towards the edges. Let that be. If you want to decorate your tree, the choice is yours how you can do that. All I'm going to do is take my white, put a little bit of yellow, and put a couple of lights on my tree. So I'm just adding a couple of lights on my tree. I mixed white and yellow. And those are only the details I'm going to do. But you can do what you want on your tree. Again, you could have like blue and silver balls if you wanted, or red, or just keep lights. All right. So now I said that what we're going to do is go back into everything. At this point, you might still be working on your tree. And if you're still working on your tree, that's fine. Everyone works at a different pace. What I'm going to start to do is go back in, add some shadows, especially to my ground, add some details I'm going to use my bigger brush. And I'm just going to get some more details in. Again, you can add as many or as few details as you want in the painting like this. You know, we've got the three, kind of the tree, the window, and the fireplace. And you can choose to add what you'd like to add or leave out what you want to leave out. So we're backtracking, sort of going over the color that we mixed before. For our wall and for our ground is we took our white, we took our brown, and we took some black, and we made a color fairly kind of like warmish, dull color, if that makes any sense. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of shadow underneath my tree and just around in some of the areas. So first I'm going to test it out a little bit. So you can see I put a little test strip there and it's a little too dark for me. And feel free to do that with your paint. Test out your colors on your painting. You can't always tell what they look like on your palette because your palette is white and your painting now has a color in the background. So you can see I got like kind of a really light tone that's very similar to my backgrounds, but I want it to be a little bit darker. And I'm adding some dark right underneath where my fireplace is. I want that foreground to have a little bit of darkness. I'm kind of working since my ground is already painted. I'm working a little thinner with my paint. So that means I'm taking a little bit more water and I'm adding a little bit more water than usual. Because we already have a layer of paint down. That's the kind of beauty about going back into your painting at this point. I'm adding, you can see I'm making my ground just slightly darker. You can see the difference. What I really want to focus on is underneath my tree because there would be some shadow underneath that tree that I didn't put in before, but we can put in now. As you can see, it's pretty brighter there. So I'm not too concerned about going right next to the edges of my tree, but you can see I got a little bit of darkness underneath my tree. Again, you might notice you can kind of see my brush stroke. I'm not using a lot of paint, I'm using a little extra water. And that little bit of shadow is going to kind of set our tree on the ground. We can even get a little bit darker if we wanted. Nothing too dark, but if we wanted to get a little bit darker, that was way too dark. And there we go. See that? Adding a little bit of that shadow against that tree. We can do that. I'm gonna lay this down a little bit. See if I can fix my camera a little for you. So this shadow color that I created actually works pretty well for anywhere in the painting we want to create a little bit of dark. So I'm going to use it also against this window a little bit. If it gets too dark, add more white. If it gets too light, add more brown and black. You see that slight difference right there? That will create a little bit, again, of depth and some darkness around here. It's going to make it look like the room has got some shadows. I'm laying this on top of the color we have. Not on the whole thing, but on bits of it. Because if you look at your wall, even like around you, there's lights and there's darks, even though your wall is painted one color. I'm going to do a little on this side too, just add a little bit of dark against that window. Stuff that window in a little bit. Okay. You can see how that changed that just that little bit. And any places at this point that you need to touch up, like my background, you can kind of see that blue base that I had through here. I would go back on there and give it another coat of paint. Keep in mind, try to remember the paint colors that you mixed. We stayed pretty consistent with our paint colors. The majority of the room, like I said, is white, black, and brown. So you just have to play with your colors to make it the tone you want. So now I think what we'll do is we'll go into our candle holders, candelabra, candles. In my original painting that I did, I put 3, and I'll put 3 on now too. I got pretty dark with the candle holders. I was thinking, oh, if they were like silverish, they'd be dark. And I mixed my black, using a lot of black in this painting, black with brown. You can see it's pretty dark. Again, if I make a mistake, I'll just go over it, but that's the color I'm going to stick with right now. So the way I did that was, think about, this is the top of our fireplace, right? That's where they're going to sit, kind of a little line for that base. Let's see if I can pull this up to you a little bit. And then I thought, okay, if there's like a little one curved area, and then a flat area where a candle's going to sit. It's pretty, and I'm going to do the same thing with the next one, except I'm going to make it a little shorter, so we can have different heights of our candle holders. See, I'm almost like drawing it in right now because we're going to go in and get light. And then this one on the left side, same thing. I'm thinking like if they're a set, they're 3. They have 3 sections to it. So very simple. And the way to make this look more dimensional is I've got the dark and kind of quickly sketched out my things. They look a little wobbly right now, but that's only because we didn't get the other side. I'm going to add white to my color. And I'm going to kind of put on the other side. The same way I did like a curved line on the right side. I don't know if you guys have a good view of this, but I'm going to do the opposite. 3 and 1, 2, 3 curved lines. And then what you can do is you can take, again, you'll see that we're doing a lot of like layering of color and tones here. It's a little more complicated than what we normally do. I mix my white with my yellow, and I'm just going to put a little dab on each little section of my candle. And I'll put a little bit down the bottom. Those are my kind of, well, right now they're a little odd looking, but candle holders. And our candles could be light. So I'm just darkening some of my colors right here. So my candles are going to be, again, that gray we're using comes in really handy, that gray and the brown and the white. I'm going to put a line to show that's where my candle is going to be. That's where my candle's going to be. My candle's going to be, I'm going to make it white. I'm going to take my white, mix it with a little bit of yellow. And candle, candle, and candle. And my flame, of course. I'm going to do kind of like a yellowish dab. So if you really want to show the kind of light hitting the top of that mantle as well, what you can do is our mantle kind of top is a little bit grayish in color. You can just take that same white and yellow and just add a little bit to the top with my brush, showing a little bit of that kind of reflection of the candlelight and flickering of the candlelight. You can also, on the wall around it, add a little bit of light as well, showing that that candle is giving off some light against the wall. And again, I'm using a lot of water in my paint we're kind of doing like this, almost like washes, which is layers of light paint, and that just like kind of brightens that area right there. I think we don't have much more time left, but what I would suggest is take your small brush. At this point, this is my small brush, it's pretty thin. If you're able to add details, you can go ahead and do that. Meaning, like I noticed my fireplace, the edge is a little bit crooked, I can fix it up. As I said, if you celebrate Christmas and want to make this a Christmas painting, you can hang some stockings from your fireplace or add more detailed ornaments to your tree. I'm gonna, just because it's bothering me, change the edge of this fireplace so it's not so crooked. And this would be the point to like do any touch-ups or any kind of details that you want to do. If you want your fireplace also, like you could, some people have these kinds of like either marble fireplaces or brick fireplaces or things like that. You could take your kind of gray or stone fireplace and you can create little like stones on your fireplace. That's not what I did in my last one, but you can see that I've started that. So there's many different kind of like ways you can go with this to make it your own. Mine, I think I kept pretty simple, but I'll start to do that. I'm just putting little kind of lines. I'm not actually drawing each individual stone if I wanted a stone fireplace, but kind of thinking about the joints of those stones and what that would look like. So you can see I started that.